Republic of Tuva is a constituent entity of the Russian Federation, with its capital in the city of Kyzyl, bordering Mongolia in the south and southeast. This is the most beautiful region of our country, with a unique nature. On the territory of the Republic, there is the Ubsuner Basin Nature Reserve, mounds, remains of Uighur fortresses, Genghis Khan Road, Buddhist monasteries, and other objects of cultural and historical heritage. The President of the Russian Federation also likes to visit this region as a place of rest. But despite this, the Rear is the poorest subsidized region of the country. The poverty rate in the Republic in the 2017 year was 41.5%, which is the worst indicator in the country. There is an unprecedented level of child poverty in the Republic. The number of children in the population structure is about 35%, and due to lack of employment, most families live on benefits. As is well known, the level of poverty directly correlates with the level of crime. Therefore, in terms of the number of serious and especially serious crimes, the Republic occupies a leading position. For example, in terms of violent crime, Tuva is adjacent to Latin American countries. In Mexico, in the year 2021, there were 28 killed per 100,000 people. In Tuva in the same 2021, 30. In European countries, this figure does not exceed 5 people per 100,000. Tuva is also the leader in terms of the total number of victims, 1,550 people per 100,000, with an average of 852 per 100,000 in Russia. At the same time, less than 350,000 people live in the Republic. In other words, Tuva also occupies one of the last lines in the rating of subjects by population. The structure of crime is also different. If in Russia the most frequent crimes are theft, fraud, and drug-related articles, then in Tuva in second place after thefts. Intentional infliction of minor harm to health, and murder and attempted murder in Tuva are among the 10 most frequent crimes. In general, in Russia, such crimes are not even included in the top 20. In addition to this, clannishness is very strongly developed in Tuva. Family ties are crucial. The story that will be discussed today thundered throughout the country in 2023 year. The circumstances of the case and the course of the trial have once again proved that bribery and nepotism in our state, even within a small population on the outskirts of the country, can significantly slow down the process, and often completely destroy hopes for a fair trial. This case has already been sorted out on many major channels. There are no mysteries left in it, but I consider it my duty to sort it out on the Unsolved Mysteries channel. The victim in this case is a child. Therefore, if for ethical reasons you are not ready to hear some facts, I recommend skipping this issue. A terrible crime occurred in the small village of Oshina with a population of just under 1,000 people. In January 2023 year, in the village there is a school. A boy from a large family also studied at this school. The parents are young, both 28 years old. Moreover, the boy was born to his mother in her first marriage, when she was only 17 years old. Then the woman divorced and remarried. In her second marriage, she also had children. Anyway, the family is prosperous. The stepfather raised the stepson as his own. According to Asa, the boy's mother, she had a good relationship with her son. The boy grew up open and good-natured, always helped his mother around the house. The boy, in addition to studying at school, went to the Koresh National Wrestling section. She is in the same educational institution. In general, wrestling on TV is the most popular sport. The son of Neza has dreamed of mastering this sport since childhood, and already at the age of 7, when he went to the first grade. His mother took him to this section for the first time. Everything went well until January 2023 year. And then the woman began to notice that the child was behaving strangely. After classes, he immediately went to the room, slept a lot, did not do homework, refused to do housework, became generally sluggish and apathetic. And then he started hiding his underwear. Then he began to suffer from fecal and urinary incontinence. Asa tried many times to find out what happened, but her son stubbornly remained silent. 12 days passed in this way. And one day the boy asked his mother if it hurt to die. Then the woman sounded the alarm and asked her husband to talk to her son. It turned out that the suffering of the child began on the 10th of January, 2023 year. The boy was returning home from another training session. He was ambushed by 3 high school students. One of them was 15 years old, the other 2 were 17 years old. They were studying in the same section. The guys were celebrating their birthday and were drunk. Teenagers dragged a child into a street toilet and abused. For a second, then there were 20-degree frosts in Tuva. And then they intimidated the child, forbidding him to tell his parents about everything. A few days later, the violence was repeated. And allegedly every time the attackers watched gay porn, and then tried to repeat the actions from there. 3 scoundrels enjoyed torturing a defenseless child. And it wasn't limited to one case. A total of 5 episodes took place from the 10th to the 22nd of January. One of the teenagers abused the boy 5 times, the other 2 twice. After learning about everything, Isa immediately called the number 112. It was about 9 o'clock in the morning. The Interior Ministry officers arrived 2 hours later. They drew up a protocol and sent the woman and her son to the hospital in the administrative center of the district, the village of Semogoltai. The family got there by 14 o'clock, but they did not have time to see a doctor. The investigator called Asa and told her to come to the police station immediately with the child. Asa's son was interrogated for 9 hours without a break. Although the Criminal Procedure Code prohibits interrogating children for more than an hour without a break and for more than 2 hours, with a half-hour break. Parents were interrogated almost as much. Asa said that at the Semogoltai police station, the child and parents were interrogated for about 17 hours in total. All this time, the boy had incontinence. Only after that the child was taken to the doctors. But not for hospitalization, but for an examination, which the 3rd grader's family described as barbaric and expressed suspicion that its purpose was not to help the child, but to merge the case. Moreover, it was necessary to make an examination not in Semogoltai, but in the capital of Tuva, Kizil, and always before 8 o'clock in the morning. The family had to go there at night. They reached the hospital by 4 o'clock in the morning. Already in the hospital, my son began another column retention. The parents asked the doctor to give something to somehow clean the child. The doctor gave a towel, then without putting on a bathrobe, and without turning on the light. The doctor put on gloves and stuck his finger into the boy's anus. The child at this time began to scream in pain. And the doctor said that everything was fine with him and that he was a virgin. This is not a joke. The doctor really used that word. As a result, the doctor recognized the child as healthy, although the boy obviously had fecal incontinence, problems with urination, and swelling in the anus. After the visit to the doctor, the shocked parents went back to their district center Semogoltai to have the boy examined by other specialists. But a nurse at a local hospital reported that they were denied hospitalization of the child. According to Asa, the medical institution explained that the ban on hospitalization was announced by an investigator named Hamushko. After that, the boy's mother threatened the investigator that she would complain to the prosecutor's office, and insisted on a re-examination. She was conducted again, and this time the boy was examined as expected. The school students were detained, and a criminal case was opened under Part 4 of Article 132 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Violent acts of a sexual nature with the use of violence against a minor victim. In March 2023 year, 3 suspects were sent under house arrest. The injured boy was taken to the hospital, and the suspected teenagers began to be protected, and in very strange ways. As the boy's mother told, a girl from the district came to the investigative committee. She said that Isa herself confessed to her that her husband was raping her and her son in a perverted form. However, then this woman admitted that she lied because she was promised money. But the investigation began to consider the first statement to the girl with all care. Both of the boy's parents were interrogated, driven through a polygraph. It was all excruciating for them. By that time, the boy was already in the hospital for the second time with his mother, from whom he was afraid to move even a step away. According to his mother, the victim was treated with saline and enemas were made. There were no medications given in the hospital. They said that the boy's parents should buy them themselves. However, the child still needed treatment, which no one could provide in a remote Tuvan village. Then Asa turned to the famous Tuvan singer Barbana Barzhai. The artist told about the situation in her social networks, and the case was widely publicized. A huge number of people responded to the collection of money for the treatment of the boy in Moscow, which was announced by the singer Barzhai Drum. In a few hours, more than 1.5 million rubles were transferred to the rehabilitation of the boy. But the most important thing is that the people began to demand decisive actions from the authorities in conducting an investigation and punishing the perpetrators. On the same day, a petition was created on Change.org and a collection of signatures was organized in support of the boy. At the local level, the story is hushed up. They want to close the case faster because of the influential family ties of the residents accused of this crime. The affected party, for lack of money and authoritative connections, is deprived of all support from the protection of children's rights. The government, the Ministry of Health. Moreover, there is a massive attack on the affected family, so that the incident does not receive publicity and dissemination. The family asks for help from caring citizens of the Russian Federation, as the petition on the website was called. According to local media, the child was sent to specialized institutions for treatment before the collection was announced. He talked to psychologists, underwent physical therapy. The issue of the boy's health was under control in the Regional Ministry of Health and the government of the region. Then he was hospitalized in Moscow, where from April 3, 2023 year, he had to undergo additional rehabilitation at the Scientific and Practical Center for Mental Health of Children and Adolescents, named after Sukareva. But all these quite logical steps were taken only after the uproar in social networks on April 1. It became known that after a public outcry, the Children's Ombudsman of the Republic of Tuva, Sazana Tavu, left her post. She had been in this position since April 2022. That is, she worked for exactly a year. And during her tenure as the Commissioner for Children's Rights, Sazana Tabu set the task of building a system of interaction of all those responsible for working with families and children. In this direction, she worked, among other things, with law enforcement agencies and penitentiary institutions. It is reported that she made the decision to leave this post voluntarily and independently. The head of the Republic, Vladislav Kovaliga, found out about the case. Azy and her son were paid for a flight and a rehabilitation course in Moscow. But later, the head of the region refused Asa a personal reception. Judges and prosecutors were constantly changing in the case. At the same time, the family was constantly under pressure. So the relatives of the rapists openly threatened the boy's family. The brother of one of the high school students said that if his brother was imprisoned, he would shoot them all. The boy's grandmother, Asa's mother, lived in this village for more than 30 years. Unknown people broke windows in her house. And in June 2023 year, when the woman was at work, there was a fire on her plot. All outbuildings were burned down, a barn, a vegetable garden, a toilet, a shower room. The pensioner connects the incident with the investigation of the rape of her grandson. The woman believes that the arson was set by supporters of the accused high school students. However, the grandmother admits that she has no evidence. The pensioner's neighbor, meanwhile, claims that the fire that occurred was an accident. Allegedly, local men smoked and drank in a kosht on a neighbor's plot. The smoldering cigarette but got into the dry manure, and after a while a fire appeared. The day was dry and hot, so the flames spread to other buildings. Many villagers expected that the family of the injured boy would contact the police because of the fire. But that didn't happen. The neighbor does not believe in the arson version. However, a woman can be biased. She is a classmate of a relative of one of the suspects in a high-profile case. The case was taken under special control by the head of the Investigative Committee of Russia, Alexander Bastrikin. And the State Duma deputy Alexander Kinstein gave additional publicity to the case, who wrote in his Telegram channel that the leadership of the Investigative Committee of the Rear seems to have something to fear. He also said that the child's mother was acquainted with the materials on the appointment of examinations only the other day. After the publicity, that is 2 months after her statements. In addition, they took a non-disclosure agreement from her, trying to protect her from communicating with journalists in this way. At the same time, the woman has a poor command of the Russian language. But no one translated her interrogation protocols into Tuvan. They just told me where to put my signature. The deputy then noted that the criminal case should be withdrawn from the proceedings of the Tuvinsky Investigative Committee, or, at least, take the case under the strict control of the central apparatus of the Investigative Committee of Russia and the Prosecutor General's office. Separate questions to the leadership of the Investigative Committee and the Prosecutor's Office of the Republic. Why have they not seen obvious lawlessness for 2 months? He also prepared the relevant deputy requests. The Ministry of Education of Tuva reported that an inspection was organized at the school where this became possible, and the director was removed from office. By the way, in such high-profile scandals, this is a fairly common situation. Quickly find the last one and expressively dismiss. Meanwhile, in Tuva, they have now decided to tell the children what threatens for such crimes. Thus, a large-scale survey of school children on the topic of physical and sexual violence was conducted in the Republic. This was announced by the head of the Republic, Vladislav Havlik, in his Telegram channel. He noted that the Investigative Committee of the region is ready to help methodically in conducting this study. The social bloc of the Republican government will deal with it, and representatives of the Kyzyl prosecutor's office held a preventive conversation at the local lyceum. They spoke about the criminal responsibility of minors for committing crimes against property, human life and health, sexual freedom, and sexual inviolability. At the same time, they gave examples from the prosecutor's practice. They promised to give similar lectures in other schools. A criminal case was opened against Aza herself. The story is murky. On the 26th of May, the woman received a call from the police and was told to come to the station urgently. There her husband was given to sign the papers. Not knowing Russian well, the man signed the documents without reading them. On June 6th, the investigator called the woman and asked if she had found a lawyer. It turned out that a case was opened against her under the article on deliberately false denunciation, Article 306 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation. Because of an old statement that she wrote to her husband after a quarrel, Aza explained the situation. In 2022 year, she and her husband had a banal family quarrel, and under the pressure of emotions, the woman wrote a statement to the police. When she and her husband were called to the police, they immediately reconciled, and the case was dismissed. And already on the 26th of May, 2023 year, when the husband signed, a criminal case was opened on the same application. As a result, the court fined the woman 20,000 rubles. Later, she herself wrote a statement to the police about slander in her address. Only here is a case of libel against herself, and because of no one was in a hurry to open. Since the case was made public, comments from fake accounts have periodically appeared on social networks, where it is claimed that Aza suffers from alcohol addiction and does not follow her children. There were no alleged rapes of her son, and the whole story was sucked out of the finger. The same people write that their son's rectal injury is not related to high school students. According to commentators, Aza's husband raped her in an unnatural way first, and then their common son. To prove the opposite, Aza and her son had to take tests. Meanwhile, the suspects continued to sit under house arrest, although Aza herself was sure that in fairness they should be in jail. In one of the appeals, the woman told about the parents of the accused. They're rich. Their relatives and acquaintances have connections. They openly said that they had spent millions on a bribe. Everyone in the Republic was on their side, from commentators in social networks to research doctors, who diligently slowed down the progress of the case and refused to help the boy and his parents. Abusive parents allegedly have connections at all levels, starting from the village administration, ending with the government of the Republic of Tuva. Pedophiles, when they met with the boy's relatives, openly laughed and were sure of their impunity. According to human rights activist Eva Murkacheva, who investigated this story, some parents of high school students worked at the same school. According to the boy's mother, the head of the Republic did not provide any assistance, and all this time he did not accept his parents, refused them a personal reception. Therefore, Aza has lost confidence in the work of specialists of her native republic. She saw their real faces. The woman believes that everyone was in collusion and tried to hush up this case. In subsequent interviews, Aza said that the criminal case is standing still. Courts postpone, prosecutors and judges change. The accused have been under house arrest for a year. At the same time, according to the woman, all the evidence is present in the case. There is even a video where one of the high school students tells in what sequence his friends raped a child. According to the woman, she managed to find out that the case with her son is not the first in this school, but at least the third. But in the first 2 times, the crimes allegedly did not go public and let the case go on the brakes. The boy's grandmother claims that when Asa took her grandson to the district center in the hospital and the police, they were followed by the school principal and his deputies with a proposal not to write statements and tried to pay off. They offered the Rams to arrange a relative of the boy's family as a watchman at school to work. It may seem ridiculous to some, but in conditions of poverty in the Republic, even 1 Ram is quite a good capital. At the same time, a relative of one of the suspects, when the case has already received some publicity. I collected all signatures and characteristics in defense of 3 high school students. Allegedly, these are exemplary and diligent guys who actively participate both in studies and in sports and public life of the school, and who could never commit such a terrible crime. And that this Asa herself invented this story, because allegedly in fact, the boy was abused by his own stepfather. And in general, the boy's family allegedly drinks heavily, and this behavior is not new to them. In addition, she said that the allegedly injured boy wrote to his biological father, who lives in the same village, shortly before the tragedy, with a request to pick up the boy. But the man refused. Also, according to this woman, the injured child is not Sugar himself. At school, he had bad characteristics, constantly lies, and proved himself only from the bad side. By the way, the characteristics from his school say the opposite. Well, the relatives of the suspected high school students and their children have been under house arrest for a long time. Are sure that Asa started the whole story just for money. The mother of this allegedly injured boy leads to harassment. This boy was not raped by our children. Our children are innocent, says Ika, the mother of one of the high school students. She works as a nurse in a children's office and says that Asa's family is in a bad way. Every now and then, they have quarrels at home, and her eldest son is on bad terms with her stepfather at all. The victims in response say that they are openly threatened. Ika insists that the mother does not call the mother of high school students, otherwise teaches the child what kind of testimony should be given. The mother of the second high school student works at the school. She is a teacher, and her father is a driver. Salaries are far from gorgeous, like all state employees, but for some reason, the accused have no doubt that they were pointed out only for one purpose: to get money. We are considered the richest according to the victims. I am a simple teacher at school, my husband is a driver. Everyone knows what our salaries are. Somehow we pay off loans. Asa says that we have bribed everyone, even the government. And when they went to Moscow for treatment, they even bribed doctors there. We are from a small village, and she says that we have a cafe, a shop. We have nothing. We are simple hard workers, Ira says in an interview with a journalist. Then the women say that there are a lot of lies in the words of the injured boy. They say their children did not celebrate any birthday and did not drink alcohol. But in the criminal case, there is reverse information correspondence, confirms that there was alcohol. Moreover, teachers warned them not to drink in the cold. The mother gives another argument. The violence could not have been committed from the 10th to the 22nd of January. After all, one day the whole school did not study. There were severe frosts. The fact that there were 2 more school weeks for some reason is not taken into account. My son is calm. The second boy, he's in the 9th grade. He has exams, preparation, he has no time to go to the toilets. And the third one is good, homemade. They characterize their sons as women. But the injured schoolboy, despite all the wildness of the situation, is extremely badly spoken about. They insist that Asa uses her son as a weapon. If we take our village, then from the very beginning, everyone knew that our children were innocent. Everyone first asked to check Asa's family. We have data that something is wrong in their family. And they scoffed. The investigators pressed the homeroom teacher to write a good characterization. Everyone says they heard it in the corridor, but he himself too is not Sugar, you know. Nimble, lying all the time, says a relative of the accused. And in general, no one threatens her, and even more so they did not set fire to the house. And then there are inconsistencies again. Asa did not talk about her house, she immediately noted that the buildings in her parents' yard were set on fire. The fact that the parents' house is designed for Aza's older sister doesn't change much. But the families of the accused give him out for outright lies. She is afraid that she will be exposed, and therefore she began to write a lot, shout, and turn to bloggers. According to psychology, it is clear that such mythomaniacs should behave like this. All this she has one goal: to make money on her son, to collect money from the people, concludes Ika. The fact that mothers do not believe in the guilt of their teenage sons and try to protect them in every possible way is quite natural. The terms for such crimes are huge, and responsibility comes from the age of 14. My son asked me, "Is it even possible, Mom, that a boy's boy is a man?" This is the first time I've ever heard this. It is incomprehensible to the mind that there are such people in this world who have lied to him. And he didn't know about it at all, says the nurse. Here the woman is lying. The fact that the children were perfectly aware will tell the query history in their browser. In the protocol of inspection of one of the phones, it will be written in black and white that on the day of the violence, they watched the corresponding porn videos. She has collected money like this before. There are a lot of cases on her husband. She herself wrote a statement about him, about the beating, and then they tried it on. Says a relative of teenagers. The mother of the accused teenagers gave an interview to blogger Alina Lushavina. They stated that their sons had been stipulated that the A's family was very unreliable, and moved to their village only at the end of 2022 year. According to them, when interrogated by investigators, A's son confessed that he had slandered 3 teenagers. The forensic examination did not reveal their involvement in this or other similar crimes, and that Aza allegedly blurted out after such conclusions that her family bribed another medical examiner to write the necessary statement regarding violent actions against her son. And in general, the woman often got confused in the testimony. Also, according to the women, the teenagers allegedly were in other places on the days when the abuse was committed, and were not familiar with the injured boy. The mothers claim that the police interrogated their sons for many hours. During the interrogations, they were allegedly subjected to psychological pressure and even torture. However, in their interview, the women refused to directly report torture. Accusations of threats, the family of the injured boy, and bribery of law enforcement officers and medical workers. All 3 women deny it. The mothers of teenagers consider this whole story to be competently promoted with the help of well-known bloggers and human rights activists, the purpose of which for Aza is 1, to earn a lot of money on this. All this time, there was no treatment for the boy. He was simply given enemas, wrote human rights activist Eva Merkacheva. On the 3rd of June, 2024 year, journalist Ksenia Sobchak told about the case. She said that she had moved the whole A's family to Moscow and arranged for her son to be rehabilitated in the best hospital in the capital. I did it in silence mode so that the family would be comfortable. They're finally safe. Away from relatives' rapists, pressure, as with their views, she wrote in her Telegram channel. At the same time, a relative of one of the accused claims that when Aza and her son arrived in Moscow, the boy's mother said that the food in the hospital was poisoned, and a doctor with 38 years of experience found no traces of abuse. And the incontinence of the boy is allegedly connected with the peculiarities of his development. The woman calls Aza a hysterical woman who likes to make a row, always tries to take everything off on the phone, and that she literally forced investigators to open a criminal case against 3 teenagers. However, why did A's choose these 3 teenagers as the accused? Neither the mothers of the accused nor their other relatives can answer. Allegedly, Aza was only going to blackmail teenage parents at first in order to get a certain amount of money for her silence. But later she changed her mind and brought the case to court in order to earn even more sums on this, estimated to date in the tens of millions of rubles. Aza herself said that the doctor examined the documents, talked to her son about the examination rule, and concluded that the boy had been treated incorrectly all last year. For the entire year and a half since the rape, the boy remained incontinent. He needed to have an operation right away. According to the mother, the son was very tired of diapers at night and diapers. The politician Lyudmila Narusova, the mother of Ksenia Sobchak, and a part-time member of the Federation Council, The executive branch of the Republic of Tuva did not stay aside either. She personally talked with the child's mother Asa and appealed to the children's rights commissioners in Tuva, asking them to also take control of the family of the injured student. I have a request not to ignore this family. Can you help me? I will forward my requests to the prosecutor's office, which I wrote, and the prosecutor's answers, indicating that the investigation worked completely unsatisfactorily in the district itself. There was pressure on Asa when they initiated criminal cases. I understand that this is not your competence, but you will still look at the answers in order to know the names of the interrogators, who did not conduct this work professionally enough, said 73-year-old Lyudmila Borisovna. As part of the carefully Sobchak program, a former investigator of the Investigative Committee of Russia gave this comment to the possible sentence of criminals. According to paragraph B of Part 4 of Article 132 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, the accused may face up to 20 years in prison. However, at the time of the crime, they had not reached the age of 18. Therefore, the court may impose a sentence of no more than 10 years, depending on the role of each in the commission of the crime. In June, the case was considered in court and reached the final stage. Back in October, the defendants petitioned for a panel of 3 judges to consider the case. The request was granted, so the case began to be considered from the very beginning in another court, the Kyzyl City Court. It should be noted that the country of protection summoned a large number of witnesses to court, 35 people. The public perceived this as an artificial delay in the process. The trial was held behind closed doors, since the parties to the process had not reached the age of 18. Therefore, there are no details of the trial and investigation in the public domain, and there cannot be. According to the Telegram channel Bloody Lady, the results of the trial and the sentences of the accused became known. One of the rapists was given 9 years and 10 months in prison. The second youngest was given 7 years in prison. But he gave confessions, which in court were the main evidence of the guilt of all 3 teenagers. The third minor involved received 8 years. The mother of a 10-year-old boy who was raped a year and a half ago said that the country of protection will appeal the verdict. He is preparing with a lawyer for both an appeal and a cassation instance to the Supreme Court of Russia. Therefore, the sentence will enter into force only after 1 or 2 months. Of course, the parents of the accused will try to make every effort to drag the process to their side and get their sons out of prison. This story perfectly shows how you can avoid punishment by having money and connections, even at the level of a small district center. Of course, neither the parents of the accused teenagers, nor local authorities, nor officials at the level of the government of the Republic wanted to make this story public. However, in such cases, only wide publicity can help. And Asa and her husband managed to overcome all the pressure, intimidation, and even threats against themselves. And now imagine how many such stories that are also trying to be silenced and hidden across the country. And in the same Tuva, given the crime rate in the Republic. Therefore, if something similar has happened to you or your loved ones, unfortunately, and you are ready to make this story public, contact the authors of the Unsolved Mysteries channel in one of the ways that you see on the screen.